Early the morning after his encounter with the Noctavega, Ed sat alone at Haruka's bar, working on her broken radio. He flipped the switch on the radio, and an old Nipponese melody crackled through. "Hey, nice going." Haruka patted his back, having come down from her room without him noticing. "I think you found your calling." "Nothing major. The capacitor just got knocked out of the breadboard. Must have happened a couple bar fights ago. All the guys staying here straight out of Southtown, you tend to lose track of which fight breaks what." "I'd say that sounds rough, but it doesn't sound like you agree." "It keeps things from getting too boring. The only problem is now I have to renew my permit to have a working radio." Ed slowly started sliding the radio off the bar when she stopped him. "It's annoying, but I'd rather have a working radio. Besides, I don't have to renew it if they don't find out it's working again." He gave a slight smile. "Rules only apply if you get caught." "Exactly." The corner of her mouth picked up ever so slightly. "So, are you ready for your next lesson, or would you rather head to bed?" "I'm good to keep going." "When do you find time to sleep?" He shrugged with a smile. "It's a mystery." The three creeps who had harassed Morgan and the others the night before woke up at the prodding of a passing officer. Upon checking their tellers for the time, they found the same text message delivered from each other's tellers. There's more where these came from. Followed by a photo of each of them in a compromising and salacious position. With each other. "Worse than last time," Haruka said after swallowing a bit of egg yolk-drenched rice. "You said I should try my own thing." Egg over rice is a classic breakfast dish. People expect to see the yolk sitting atop the rice, not mixed in with it. If they want it blended together, they can do that themselves. It's a small dish that can be eaten quickly. Doing it myself saves them time to get on with the day. You also didn't add enough salt. I didn't add any salt. There's enough sodium in the yolk as well as carbs and protein in the dish overall. I'm taking the consumer's health into account. By this point, Morgan had sauntered out of their room, her hair disheveled and her eyes not noticeably open. Ed put his egg-over-rice bowl in front of her alongside one Haruka had made as a demonstration. "Morgan, do you detect a difference between the two?" She dumped each bowl's contents into her mouth, finishing them both in a freshly poured glass of water in seconds. Belched, groaned, "No," and sauntered off to the bath, never opening her eyes. Ed presented his arms to Haruka. "Sounds like a passing grade to me. Is she why you're learning to cook?" "No, self-improvement is its own reward." She pointed to where Morgan had sat. "That seems more like settling than striving." "I've caught up to you in only a few days." "It was just egg over rice." The two would continue bickering as they made themselves breakfast. Elsewhere, a beautiful Nipponese woman finishes arranging her teenage daughter's hair. "Now, Makoto, you know to go straight to the matchmakers." "Yes, Mother." "And go out the back way. Don't go near the dojo. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Mother. I'll see you when I get back." Haruka leaned against one of the pillars of the bar, watching Ed. He'd eaten his breakfast, done the dishes, and was just waiting for Morgan, with his head propped up and his eyes closed. "Tired?" she asked. "Often," neither opening his eyes nor shifting his pose. You're not going to help anything if you push yourself too hard. Everyone needs rest." "I know my limits. I'm still operating well within them. Thank you for your concern," he said, slightly more robotic than usual. Morgan came out of the room in a completely different person from an hour ago. "Ready, Ace?" "You haven't called me that in a while." He followed her towards the door, until Haruka stopped them. "Forgetting something, Ace?" He looked back and shrugged. "Your sword? Under the counter?" "Oh, sorry. I put a note on it asking if you would hand it off to Balso or Teppy when you see them, if you'd be so kind." "Sure." She lit a cigarette. With no other words, they waved her off, though with Haruka it was more of a shrug. The teenage daughter, Makoto, returned to her mother with a ripped kimono. "Makoto," she sighed, "I told you not to go by the dojo." "I didn't, but Hitomi was running late and we bumped into each other." She helped her take off her kimono. "How did it get so torn just by bumping into each other?" "He also said that I looked like a painted bull." "And so you responded like one." She looked down. "Yes. You couldn't even act like a lady for 2 minutes." "I'm sorry." "Did you at least thrash him well enough?" "I threw him over the wall into the pond." "You are your father's daughter," she smiled. "That attitude will serve you well as a wife and mother." She wagged her finger with a stern look. "But not so much before." So what was that about? Morgan asked. Haruka thinks I don't get enough sleep. You're functioning, aren't you? Thank you. Yes, exactly. You should still get more sleep. There's not enough hours in the day. Why would I waste more time than I have to literally doing nothing? It's awful lonely sleeping in that bed by myself. I'll take it under advisement. Ishiguro stepped out from an alley. Excuse me, are you the man who assaulted 4 men in a bar 2 days ago? Do you ask that question of everyone that passes by your alley? It's not my... He was about to correct him, but cleared his throat and composed himself. My name is Ishiguro. And good luck with that, Morgan said as the two turned to leave, and were faced by 4 familiar men. Is this a theatrical mugging? I think these are the 4 guys you beat up at the bar. Recently? How many bars do you go to? Oh, at the bar. I thought you said with the bar. I told you need more sleep. Why are you creeps here? One of them stepped forward. We're here to make you pay for... I am the master of the Kanashibari group, Ishiguro interrupted, causing the one thug to shut up. Wow, Morgan said, slightly turning back to him. I totally forgot you were there. See? Ed explained. It's not that hard, you just forget. Ishiguro sighed. Your comedy routine isn't as amusing as you think. Us? Ed yawned. You're literally putting me to sleep here. Morgan leaned against Ed. No, I think he really is. Ed started feeling the effects more heavily. He quickly pulled out a small gas mask from his utility belt. One of the thugs laughed. It isn't gas or anything. The boss just puts you to sleep. Ignorant Luddites don't even know anything about waves, Ed thought to himself as he dropped to his knees. He noticed Morgan slide off him and hit the ground. He gritted his teeth over not being aware enough to save her. Everything was hazy as his consciousness was slipping away from him. Did she hurt herself? Did she break her nose, chip a tooth, scar herself on a sharp rock? They'd only kill Ed, but what would these parasites do to her? He felt a knife press against his neck. We are the Kanashibari group. We are the thing of nightmares. We bring the eternal sleep. Ed gripped the arm holding the knife. You cannot fight us, no more than you can fight the night. No more than you can... There was the snapping, squishing sound of a crushed wrist. Ishiguro tried to pull back, but only dragged Ed with him. He couldn't scream in pain or fear, because Ed was trying to give an encore performance on his throat. Ed hissed through bleeding gums. Don't tell me what I can't fight! The 4 tackled Ed, causing deep gouges in their leader's neck as they pulled him off. Ed clawed and kicked and bit and screamed. Ishiguro ran, holding his throat, as his men tried to hold Ed down. The blood in Ed's throat gave his screams a haunting echo. Never sleep! Never sleep! Atapi sat at the bar, freshly bathed and dressed, just in time for his usual late breakfast. Morning, Haruka. Morning, she said, as she laid out his meal. Your father still asleep? Yeah, he got back after Ed and I, and he didn't have a nap yesterday. He just put the food in his mouth when he remembered to say, Oh, I don't think Ed should be asleep too much longer. He said he wanted to clean up a bit and that he was going to look at your radio first. Yeah, I saw that he fixed it. He chuckled. With everything he does, I don't know where he finds the time to sleep. Yeah. She not so gently grabbed the sword and placed it atop the bar, causing Atepi to nearly choke in surprise. He said to give this back to you when I saw you. Consider it given. Atepi successfully dislodged the food. Right, thanks. He looked the sword over before asking, Did he say... But she was already headed outside for a smoke. He never did see her smoke at the bar when people were eating there, but he also never saw her leave the bar when people were eating there. He likely wouldn't have paid it much thought if not for her mood. He looked at the sword and considered what he should do. Morgan awoke to the sound of Ed beating the ground, growling and vomiting blood. Ed? What happened? What did they do to you? Made me angry, he continued. You're puking a lot of blood. Not, he regurgitated more, mine. She looked to the pile of 4 dead men. She sighed and drank from her bottle. The bodies were ignited quickly enough. Will that incinerate them? Ed asked before being engulfed himself. It was the same suffocating heat he'd felt back at the steakhouse. Combined with the early morning humidity, it helped with one last regurgitation. It should take care of most of the evidence. Right. He wiped his mouth. I doubt Nipponese forensics is that sophisticated. He dusted himself off. Ready to go? She winced at the sight of him, as though all the blood in his face had gone straight into his eyes. You don't look so good. So what else is new? Come on, we're probably running late. Ed, if I yawned like this, she demonstrated a sweet exasperation, and said I was still tired, would you believe me? Likely so, yes. And if I said I wanted to go back for a quick nap, I'd take you. And if I asked you to stay because you're like a big soft teddy bear? He sighed. I'd stay. And you'd go to sleep? Yes. And you'd be very upset if I went out on my own while you slept? I'd shave off all the hair on your head, and your tail. Because you don't like being tricked. I don't like operating under false information. She took his hand. Well, I'm not tricking you, am I? And she escorted him back to Haruka's. The men under Ishiguro's employ came from all over Nipponese, bound together in a mutual desire for power. Power Ishiguro offered. Even more, he didn't use his power to oppress his men. To be another shield to protect him. He used his power to help them. Such an unbeatable power was best used on the front line rather than hidden behind those without power. As long as they did their parts, he would do his. They stood confident in the certainty Ishiguro's power could never be defeated. And then Ishiguro burst through the door, holding together what was left of his throat. Ed and Morgan returned to Haruka's bar. She took one look at him. Told you not to push yourself. His eye bulged in agitation. He raised his finger, ready to enlighten her, when Morgan gently pulled his face to her. No. You're going to bed. I'll talk to her. Morgan gave Haruka a polite nod and helped Ed back to their room. He lied down on the futon. Be sure to take my belt with you. I prefer to travel light. Knowing you'll have it to help you, and I won't to help me, will be 2 points discouraging me from leaving before I'm fully rested. She sighed and put on the belt. It was about as heavy as her bag. I really do spoil you. Just be careful. I know. One scratch and you'll probably never sleep again. She lightly rested her foot on his chest. If you don't get to sleep, I'm docking your pay again. He closed his eyes and exhaled so much it looked like he deflated. She put on his bucket hat to hide her ears and tucked her tail under the belt. She pulled a small mirror from one of his belt's pockets to examine herself. Supermodel part-timing as a handyman. It's not without its unique charms. I can make the look work. Morgan exited the room and stood a couple feet from the bar Haruka was standing behind. Even at 3 meters from each other, Haruka could see her golden eyes glare at her like a beast in the night. Look, bitch, Morgan said with absolute authority in her voice. I know Ed's a smartass, and it's really satisfying to get one up on him, getting to tell him that you told him so. But that man is a saint who will tear himself apart every day for the sake of others. He knows his limits. If he says he's good to go a week without sleep, he can go a week without sleep. Getting sleep the night before wouldn't have amounted to much on him saving my life from some meta who can put people to sleep with a wave of his hand. You have no idea what he goes through. It's not careless that gets him those scars. It's him being awesome that kept any of those scars from being a tombstone. I don't know what he sees in you, but I have the sense to trust that he knows what he's talking about. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let you run your mouth as if you know Ed better than he knows himself. I'm definitely not going to let you give him shit for not being able to push himself as hard as he does. And if I catch you giving him a hard time because you don't know any better, I'm going to make your pain my new hobby. You feel me? Haruka tapped out her cigarette. Am I supposed to be intimidated? She turned to leave, but found Morgan inches from her face. Her tavern was suddenly much darker, as if no other light dared to outshine the light coming from Morgan's eyes. Do you feel me? Haruka was going to ask if Morgan wanted to feel her knuckles upside her head, but her jaw was locked in place. Her throat was closed. Her chest was tight. She could feel sweat beading on her forehead. Morgan backed off. Yeah, you feel me. She left, taking the darkness with her. Haruka dropped her cigarette, finally able to breathe again. Lonnie adjusted his watch. Hey, babe, what do you think of Morgan? I think she's awesome. She's smart and funny and cool and a great singer and I was thinking she'd that we should be hanging out more. Well, we hung out yesterday and didn't make any real plans after that. I was thinking like we could make this a regular thing. And not just the four of us, like the guys and the girls pair off, or... What do you think about Ed? He's nice and smart. Morgan thinks he's cool, so maybe you two could hang out. And I could take Morgan off somewhere so that it could just be you two talking and she wouldn't be talking for him, you know? That sounds okay. Great, he kissed her. It's gonna be great hanging out with them. And Atepi's cool too. You haven't met him yet, but you'd like him. I think it might be more fun if we all hung out together. Oh, totes, definitely, yeah. We're still gonna be doing that, it's just not all the time, you know? And there's still going to be time for just the two of us, right? 100%. You're my girl. You're my top priority. She blushed a bit, bringing her shoulders up to her ears. Yeah, it's just... Okay, I'll be straight with you. You saw Morgan at karaoke. You heard her. I'm thinking about maybe signing her. Lonnie, that's great! But we have to keep it a secret. Things could get awkward if we don't handle it right. I gotta see how Ed and Morgan might feel about it before I ask them. Or else things will get super awkward, you know? Morgan exited the textile shop. An easy enough job. A throwing knife in the head of the queen and its two guards, and a mouthful of fire for the egg sack. With the rest of her day free, she decided to go exploring. With a vertical leap, she was on the roof of the textile shop. Because why limit oneself to where the roads go? Ed sat on the porch of a Nipponese mansion enjoying the night air. He brushed his long, cream-colored hair from his face. He listened to the gentle rustle of the leaves from the trees peeking over the walls surrounding the estate. Like gently running one's fingers through the keys of a piano, until one hit a broken key. There was silence amid the rustling. Ed grabbed his sword and headed towards the room of the lord he now served. He slid open the door to find a man who looked much more like himself, enjoying his third dinner of the night. A guard stood against each wall. The Lord Ed looked at Ed with the long hair. What is it? We have an intruder. If they're not already in this room, they'll be here soon. Did you see them? No, nor did I hear them. Then how the hell do you know they're here? Long-haired Ed approached Lord Ed. Because I was hired to know. He kicked the small serving table up at the ceiling. A ninja, only just now noticed, dodged the table, leaping towards the far wall, killing the guard and shooting forward towards Lord Ed. But long-haired Ed stepped in the way and blocked her short sword with his own. The ninja was Morgan, and for a brief moment she had a look on her face that he'd never seen before. She was stunned by the sight of him, and then she was run through by the two remaining guards. Ed woke up. He gave the room a quick once-over to remember where he was. It's easy to lose one's place after such a vivid dream. He was definitely back at the inn in his room, and he found the sword leaning against the wall by the door. How did you get in here? Was that dream your fault? Why am I asking you? Balso flipped the cover off his watch to feel the hands. It was a little after noon. He closed the lid when a man bumped into him. Watch where you're going, old man. I was standing here. You watch where you're going. He grabbed him by the collar, and Balso struck his chest with his palm. The man was beside himself. Well, actually, he was above and behind himself, watching his body slowly fall backwards from outside it. Then his consciousness was sucked back in by Balso's grip. He dropped to his knees, breathing heavily. Balso left without another word. Morgan was sitting on a roof eating a late lunch when she heard a confrontation and decided to check it out. It couldn't hurt to look. A philosophy that had served her well thus far. It was two men harassing a young boy, constantly pushing him down into the dirt every time he tried to stand. They were by one of the deep, rushing man-made streams that carried water from the Bianji River out to sea. She was quite a distance away on a roof, but had large enough ears to hear the exchange, though nothing she heard interested her enough to not be forgotten instantly. Something about the boy allegedly offending them, though it was clear they just wanted an easy target. Regardless, it wasn't her problem, and she had no reason to change that. With her curiosity satisfied, she turned to leave. Filthy brat like you think you can just walk across our path? The one man said, pushing the boy down again. Thinking you shouldn't stay to the side when you see us coming? Maybe he doesn't listen when he's taught because he's got dirt in his ears. Think he'll wise up after a bath? Well, the river's right there. Let's toss him in and see. The two started laughing, until the one stopped upon hearing his friend's cries for help as the water carried him down the aforementioned river. In his place, he saw only a blur, followed by the sensation of getting kicked in the stomach, the river carrying him over after his friend. Morgan casually adjusted her hair to make sure her ears hadn't popped out. She looked down at the boy, who still had tears in his eyes. She bent at the waist and pointed at the child. I hope you're grateful. What? Can you swim? No? Then I just saved your life, so you should say thank you. He quickly but nervously thanked her. She straightened her posture. You can't swim, you can't defend yourself, and your manners suck too. What do your parents teach you? I'm sorry. She grabbed him by the collar and picked him up. If you're really sorry, then shape up and learn how to be a man. Hey! A woman called out. Morgan turned to see a young woman, mid to late teens, wearing a pink Nipponese dress of some sort. It seemed a little fancier than a standard kimono. Coupled with her makeup, she seemed to be on her way to somewhere important. The young woman pointed at the boy. Put him down now! Despite her appearance, various subtle details indicated ladylike behavior was not in her nature. Morgan lowered the boy to the ground. Calm down, I was just... With a single thrust of her leg, the woman blitzed forward several meters. Her palm shot out at Morgan, who was able to grab it and throw her towards the river. Talking to him, she finished. The woman kicked off the opposite side of the river wall and launched herself back at Morgan, who barely dodged the second attack. It wasn't every day she ran into a metahuman with such a level of martial arts training. Ed was the one who did all the worrying for her, so she forgot not to let her guard down. Hey, Morgan wagged her finger at her. Fighting like that while wearing those clothes is false advertising. A girl's entitled to her secrets, but there's a limit. I won't let you hurt him. You should just leave. He grabbed the woman by the arm and tugged. No, Miko-ni, she saved me. 2 men were going to throw me into the river. She looked to Morgan. Is this true? You're going to take my word over his? She huffed, then bowed. I'm sorry. Thank you for saving him. Just don't be so quick to throw palm strikes around. I might not be so tame next time. She bent down to the boy's level. Kai-kun, you're filthy. I'll take you home, so be sure to take a bath. I'll take care of your clothes so your mother doesn't worry. Miko-ni, your clothes are ripped. Morgan, not too subtly, cleared her throat, as she twirled a small sewing kit between her fingers. Ed found himself with long blonde hair again. It was still night, only this time he was in the middle of the woods, sitting on the front step of a small temple, one only slightly bigger than his room at the inn. Morgan sat beside him, her top consisting of only bloody bandages. Enjoy the view? Apart from the large bleeding wounds, I'll admit you're quite lovely. She chuckled. I like an honest guy. The two enjoyed the night air for a moment before she asked, Where are my swords? On the tree over there. I wasn't certain you wouldn't still try to kill me once you were awake. I still might. Take off your top. Pardon? You saw mine. Show me yours. Fair enough. He chuckled and obliged. Setting his robe aside, he saw her staring quite intently, her eyes shining in the night, her lips reflecting the moonlight. She slowly crawled closer to him. You look good enough to eat. He caressed her face. You're still injured. Think of it as me giving you a handicap. She bit his lip as her hand went down his pants. Ed's eyes shot open, the air stinging them as they rolled over to look at the sword laying against the door of his bedroom. It hadn't moved. I may be sleep-deprived, he hissed, but I know these dreams are your fault. Morgan stitched up the torn clothes, going largely from memory of how she saw Ed do it. I can tell a Spitfire when I see one. I bet you don't always dress like this. What's the occasion? Makoto's going to be a bride, the boy cheered. That surprised her. At your age? Let's not get ahead of ourselves, she explained. I was merely off to see the matchmaker. At your age? I'll be 18 before long. That's when I should be married. Yikes. At least in Edge you get to at least 10, 20 years to play the field before you have to go on a dating website. She shrugged. Well, I guess it's not so bad to just sit back and wait for Mr. Right to be carted in for you. Or are you the one who's supposed to be carded in for some loser? Makoto was visibly tempering herself. I'm told the matchmaker goes through great pains to make sure the match is ideal, that the families are equally respectable. Who cares about the families? Carrying on the family name and protecting its honor is the very reason I'm supposed to be married. Screw that! You're the one getting tied down, not them. You're supposed to marry for things you want. Looks, money, a healthy sex life. Makoto fought the urge to cover Kaito's ears. Morgan was still stitching her sleeve. What about love? Well, yeah, that too, I guess. Look, if you're worried about just getting kicked out of your own home, just find a rich guy to take care of you. You're young, you're hot, you're not strapped for options, and you're strong so you can handle yourself if he thinks getting a little handsy before putting the ring on it. Is that how it is in Edge City? Dunno. Doesn't matter. You just have to look out for yourself. It's your life. You come first. I'm speaking from experience here. If you prioritize others over yourself, you'll never be happy. Morgan snipped the thread. I should charge you for this, but I'm feeling generous today, since you don't look like you have money on you anyway. Thank you for your help. Kaito lightly tugged at her sleeve. When I grow up, I'll be rich and handsome. Then I'll marry you. Makoto smiled and gave him a hug. Ed left his room and sat at the bar. How was your sleep? Restless. He rubbed his eyes, but that's nothing new. She handed him a cup of tea. This should help. You shouldn't push yourself so hard. I ran into a meta who could put several days' worth of fatigue on you within seconds. An extra night's sleep would not have helped in the least. I heard. I'm just saying you should be careful. Why do you do this to yourself? Did you put the sword in my room? No. So it was a tepi. He was the only other set of fingerprints on it. And here I was hoping to make you think the sword was haunted. You dusted it for prints? No. He tapped his goggles. These babies are pretty special. I got a sample of your prints off the cup you just handed me a moment ago. Fascinating. Ed took another sip. Are you going to answer my question? Sorry, what question? Bolso's arrival was preceded by the sound of his shoes on the wood floors. Ed, you're awake. So are you. Didn't need a shaman to divine that. I need to speak with you in private, if you'll follow me. Without waiting for a response, he headed towards the front entrance. Thompson finished wrapping the bandages around Ishiguro's neck. They were lucky to have abducted a doctor who could maintain his nerves under the circumstances. Through a couple wheezes and grunts, Ishiguro made sure he was paid handsomely and escorted home, as opposed to just erased. He'd need to remember to add an emergency doctor to the payroll, but first he needed to rest and recover, and think of how to deal with a man who nearly killed him. A little part of him was excited to have someone he could explore such a line of thought over. Bolso brought Ed to an alleyway two rows of buildings away from Haruka's. He didn't even turn to face him when he asked, What the hell is wrong with you? I get asked that question a lot. You'll have to be more specific. Bolso turned and shot his hand out, placing it over Ed's heart. Ed didn't react, but Bolso flinched as Barca moved out of the way. He placed his hand on his chest again. So this is your spirit. You mixed up mine and Barca's? Atepi did the same. For a human to have such a weak spirit, and your pet to have one more potent than the average person? He wiped his hand on his vest. How could I have known this was the case? You can't tell, but I'm shrugging. Between the lizard and the sword being so close to you, I hardly noticed your own soul being taken from you. Damn. I should have realized something was wrong last night. You didn't bring your lizard with you, right? Now I'm nodding. How could a man, let alone a boy, not even 20 years of age, twist and repress his own soul the way you have? Now I'm looking up funny cat videos on my teller. Bolso swung his cane for Ed's knee. With his goggles, he saw it coming and easily stepped out of the way. But he didn't see the pain coming regardless. Ed hit the ground, clutching his knee. What the devil? He could take a lot of pain if he properly braced himself. Even more if motivated to fight against it. But when it catches him by surprise, in that initial moment, he's just like anyone else. And he was having trouble with this pain. It was coming from inside, like shards of ice growing in the joints and pushing through the muscles. Do I have your attention now? He growled. He spoke through gritted teeth. I didn't think you'd had this kind of trick up your sleeve. I guess that's why I never see you sweat. I'm closely allied with the spirits of winter, and I can be just as cold. I'm in no mood for your jokes right now. What jokes? he grunted as the pain suddenly intensified. "You're going the wrong way if you want to have a conversation with me. Answer quickly and honestly, and the pain will be gone soon enough." He chuckled. "That's not the kind of guy I am. When in a situation like this, all my pain gets numbed real quick, knowing I ain't giving the guy who hurt me what he wants." Bolso let out a slow sigh, tapped his cane on the ground, and the icy bite started receding from Ed's knee. He started massaging it as Bolso leaned against the side of a building. That was a first for Ed. Usually when he tells people pain doesn't work on him, they just lay on more. Then came the sound of meowing from Ed's teller. "Sure, now you finished buffering." He turned it off and put it away. Bolso continued facing the building opposite him. "I don't think I want to know what made you the way you are." "That's fine. I'm not sure I could give a concise answer anyway." "Why did you spare her last night?" "I told you, she was innocent. She will kill. She was hunting that very night. She would have struck us down without a second thought. And you let her live because she hadn't killed yet? Also, the sword wouldn't." "What do you mean it wouldn't?" "I'd pull it back for a swing, my arm would lock up. I never had that problem before nor since with my arm." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "This is the first chance I've had where you weren't too crazy angry to listen." He massaged his eyes. "Where's the sword now?" "Still in my room. I gave it to Haruka, who gave it to Atepi, who... I'll be taking it back." He cut him off. "The spirit inside is too powerful for you to control. You're lucky it hadn't completely smothered your spirit to take control of your body." Ed recalled when it took control of him to flirt with the waitress, and he still couldn't make sense of why it refused to kill Aurora. Was it able to figure out she was innocent? Did it hear him speaking to it last night? "Bolso, is there a way to communicate with the spirit?" "I'm telling you not to try. Mysterious spirits can be dangerous, even for someone like me. I'm sorry for getting you involved. I'll take the sword back and we can put all this behind us." "I suppose it's not the end of the world. Fine." Ed punched Bolso in the arm as hard as he could. "That was for my knee." Bolso knocked Ed's spirit out of his body, and he dropped to the ground immediately. There was nothing to grab hold of to draw back the spirit into his body. His spirit dissipated like a puff of smoke. Bolso felt Ed's body and found a soul. Neither Ed's nor Barca's. It was the same spirit from the sword. The same small flickering ember he felt when the sword was sheathed. It had burrowed into Ed's being like a parasite and was hiding within Ed's own soul. It was pulling Ed's soul back together from the ether. Bolso was at a loss. Ed's spirit was so fragile that it couldn't be pushed out without shattering. Any attempt to remove the sword spirit from him could have disastrous consequences. Ed swung at Bolso the instant he regained consciousness. He missed, but rolled away to a safe distance. "What the discharge did you just do?" Bolso straightened his vest. "Just be certain to return the sword." He couldn't afford to let on he knew. There's no telling what the spirit would do to Ed if it was backed into a corner. A light purr from Morgan's stomach told her it was almost dinner time. Skipping rocks wasn't too bad a pastime. At least after those kids told her the rocks needed to be flat. She decided her last throw should be a good one. She gracefully pulled her arm back, felt the wind with her ears, took a slow breath, and threw it into the tree behind her, knocking a ninja out of it. She put her foot on his chest. When Ed said ninjas grew on trees, I didn't think he was being serious. He threw a knife at her and she caught it with her fingers, along with the second one that had been launched in her blind spot. He grabbed another blade from his wrist and swiped at her ankle, only for her to kick it out of his hand and pin his wrist to the ground with her other foot. "Are you going to tell me why you were watching me, or do I have to start being unladylike?" With his free hand, he pulled down his mask and spit a geyser at her. She backflipped off to avoid it. A sizzling on the ground told her that it wasn't just a mouthful of saliva, it was acid. The ninja had taken off running. He was fast enough to already be on the roof of a building across the street. But Morgan was faster. Even with a head start, she was quickly within arm's reach. She reached for his collar, but he vanished. She looked around and saw him running off to the right of her. She ripped off her headband and ran after him. Once again, just before she could grab at him, he disappeared. Her ears swiveled, picking up the slight sound of shifting sand. He was on the ground, running between the buildings. She hopped down and followed the sound of him running. She rounded the corner and bumped into Lonnie and Janet. "Hey, Morgan," he smiled. "Small world, huh?" She took a quick glance around but didn't see her target. She figured she'd ask a silly question. "You two didn't happen to see a ninja run past, did you?" The two laughed, thinking she was joking. "Where's Ed?" Janet asked. "Back at the hotel." "Morgan, you know you can't be out by yourself, right? Especially when ninjas are around." She fought the urge to roll her eyes. "Come on, we'll escort you back," her stomach growled. He chuckled. "And we'll get you some dinner, too." Morgan gave her "I'm sincerely grateful, but I don't want to let on I think you're a dip" smile. She never turned down a free meal from Lonnie, but she made sure to remind Janet she still owed her one. "So, you two didn't kill each other," Haruka observed as Ed and Balsa returned. Balsa returned to his room without a word. Ed sat at the bar. "Do you have a hot water bottle by chance?" "He roughed you up?" "I'd always thought he looked a lot like this one millennia-old mummy found frozen in an iceberg I saw in a documentary once. That comparison was more accurate than I guessed." Morgan and the others came in, Janet waving enthusiastically. "Hi, Miss Haruka!" "Just call me Haruka." Morgan patted Ed's back. "I'm just going to be dropping off my stuff. Order a dinner for me, all right? Lonnie's paying." And she headed off to her room. Haruka watched her strut off. "Is she always like that?" "You mean like a cat?" he asked. "Yes." Lonnie and Janet were whispering amongst themselves before he spoke up. "Excuse me, Miss Haruka?" "It's just Haruka." "Any chance you have a vacancy?" "Yes." "Cool. How much for a room?" Ed spoke before Haruka could. 4,000 a night, just like us." Lonnie whistled in surprise. "Do you have a discount for people who go by the week?" "No," she said bluntly. "But we do offer a free meal a day." "Oh, well, that's not bad. All right, we'd like a room, please." "You can have the one next to Ed's." "Awesome!" He gave Ed a thumbs up. "We're moving in!" Janet squealed in excitement as the two headed off to get their things from the other hotel. Ed saw Haruka turn to him with narrowed eyes. "Now, Haruka, I know you only charged us $2,500, but those guys can afford it. Their hotel room charges $50 a night, and not even with complimentary meals." "I know." She put her hand on the back of his neck and gently pulled him close. "I was going to charge them $50 too." The gentle grip stiffened into an iron one. "I charge fairly based on what I think the person can afford. I was lenient on you because I could tell you were here on work. You just cost me a lot of money." "I am so very sorry for questioning your wisdom. I am an utter idiot who should have." "How much did you say I was charging you?" The features of Ed's face sunk into his skull. "Oh, please no." She smiled and patted his shoulder. "Just something to keep in mind," then headed off to her room. "You can tell your cat I'll make dinner in an hour." Once Ed got the feeling back in his legs, he made his way to his room where Morgan was waiting. She was lying on her back, staring at the ceiling. Her legs were crossed with her foot tapping. If Ed had his senses about him, he'd notice something was on her mind. But something was on his, too. "Haruka smiled at me." She raised an eyebrow with an approving smile. "Well, look at you, Supernova." It wasn't exactly natural, nor very sincere. Well, it was actually involved in a sincere threat. She raised an eyebrow at that. Totally my fault." He relayed everything that she missed, including the message about dinner. "But the important thing is that now I have a good idea of what a genuine smile from her would look like. Not just a grin or smirk, a proper smile. And it promises to be something special." "Well, I'm happy you're happy." His smile widened. "I'm happy you're happy I'm happy." "Are you happy enough to let me pick your brain for a bit?" He sat in front of her, beaming. "My cheeks will be sore for days." "Can someone have more than one ability?" He started massaging his cheeks. "It's extremely rare, but yes. Why?" "I ran into someone today who could teleport and spit acid." He thought, "There's a few different meta abilities that allows one to stockpile the powers of other metas. Or he could have been a Delta. Deltas are metas with 2 or more genuinely unrelated abilities. I hate how that term stuck around even after the alpha classification system became obsolete. Ed, focus. Well, think of how a long tongue and jumping abilities may seem unrelated until you realize they're both part of a single frog physiology ability. Deltas, however, would have truly unrelated abilities, like the eyes of an eagle and the ability to turn into sand. Now that I think about it, he cupped his chin, pondering, how would you describe his teleportation? Was there anything noteworthy about his appearance? He looked average, and he just teleported. 1 minute he was there, and the next he was gone. When he disappeared, was there a puff of smoke? Did you hear a pop or crack when he did it? Did his image appear to shrink into a pinpoint or fade away? How far did you ever see him teleport? She tried hard to recall. Nothing like that, and he only ever teleported a short distance. In rapid succession, like pop, pop, pop? No, he just did it whenever I was getting close. Was he ever confined in any way, and he didn't teleport to get out of it? Yeah, I had him pinned to the ground, and that's when he spit the acid at me. Sounds like he was moving quick and erratic, like a fly. You mean a housefly? Yeah, houseflies and such are rather elusive creatures due to their erratic flight pattern. Your eyes keep track of them just fine until they make a sharp turn and you lose sight of them. Granted, their small size is a large contributing factor as to why that technique works, but meta abilities do sometimes alter reality to some degree for their powers to work. Like how he's able to mimic that movement pattern on foot rather than with big noticeable wings. I am assuming you'd have mentioned such wings if he had them. No wings. She groomed her tail a bit. Any recommendation on how to fight a fly man? Bug spray? A giant bug zapper? A shotgun blast to the face should prove effective. Okay, now you're just being silly.